So we are live with Myke Metzger. So you are an author, speaker, entrepreneur, and you have multiple projects. You're the co-founder of what is it? A media company,
Yeah,
right?
so I run two companies. So my main gig, what I do full time is I run a marketing company. We focus on website development and digital advertising.
Mhm.
But I also run a sports media company called BRWLRZ, which is focused on mixed martial arts and UFC for people who are not familiar. Our probably most well-known athlete through MMA and UFC would be Conor McGregor. So that is the sport that we focus on, and that is what BRWLRZ is all about. Is we are sports media that covers the sport of MMA.
But you first got into entrepreneurship behind or through branding and marketing, right?
Yeah, that's correct. BRWLRZ is kind of my passion project.
Okay. How did you get into entrepreneurship? What's kind of like your origin story?
Yeah, good question. So I've always kind of I've always been focused on digital stuff, right? As a kid, I was always pretty good with technology, whether it was, fixing the internet at my parents' house or even in high school. Most of the classes that I took were graphic design, photography, computer programming. So I've always been technically inclined for the most part, but never knew anything about entrepreneurship. As a young kid, I was never taught that I could do my own thing and generate my own income, make my own money if I wanted to. So I didn't really discover the concept of entrepreneurship until I was 24, almost 25 years old. Today I'm 31, so we're talking about 6 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. But when I was in high school, I just did these things for fun, wanting to learn how to take photos and understand branding concepts and what makes a good image, what makes a good looking graphic, and things like that. And in high school, I was almost like accidentally generating income for myself on my own accord without even thinking about it. I was really into music and I still am. And a lot of my friends were in bands and things like that. They were performing at concerts, and a lot of these guys needed t-shirt designs, or they needed, album covers, or back then MySpace was big. We didn't have Facebook. And so in high school, I was making like MySpace layouts and t-shirt designs and album cover designs, for a couple $100 here and there. And that was kind of how I got by. And then in between the ages of 18 to 24, I worked all kinds of odd end jobs, but I could never keep a job. I would literally been fired from every job I ever had. I worked at Carpool, I worked at Food Lion, which is a grocery store here. I worked at Walgreens, I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings. Just constantly got fired no matter what I did, because I just didn't grasp the concept of honestly just following any sort of structure. I battled with the law and the legal system most of my young, teenage years and young adult life, and was just never good at that. But I think at 24 was when things kind of started to turn around, and I realized that I could use some of those character traits and those personality traits to my advantage rather than them leading to like the downfall of my whole life. You know what I mean? So 24 was the year that I think I kind of started to think about this whole entrepreneur concept or idea, or, whatever you want to call it, just working for yourself. And yeah, that was the first time things started to click for me a little bit.
So your life could have gone through a different direction?
Definitely. um, when I was 12 years old was probably like literally the beginning of my legal battles. I was expelled from sixth grade, and I went to middle school in Orlando, Florida. I was expelled from school, and then went to a detentionary middle school for seventh grade and was getting in trouble for fighting and things like that. And then even in high school, I was arrested prom night, spent five days in jail for the first time in my life at 16 or 17 years old. And then kind of in and out of court constantly, all the way up until I was 24, 25. Right around that time, I was starting to turn my life around, and it took, years to fix all of these mistakes that I had made, finally clear my records and pay off all these fines and get my license back and all these things. So it took a long time, but yeah, I mean, my life could have went a very, very drastically different direction for sure.
So is it fair to say that you're a very hyperactive person and you channel that energy into something good, into entrepreneurship and branding? That's where you use your creativity to and whatnot. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think that's a fairly fair statement. I mean, as far as like hyperactivity, I'm sure there's people that get way more hyped up than I do. I'm probably more of like a stern, um, kind of a dickhead sometimes, you know. I think sometimes I take myself a little bit too seriously, just being in the industry that I'm in, kind of a consultant business person. You know, it's constantly communicating with clients back and forth and doing the best that I can to present myself professionally. But I like to have fun. I mean, the way that I kind of channel my creative energy is through sales and through marketing and through conceptualizing different ideas for people's brands and just putting it down on paper and just trying as hard as I can to be really, really great at what I do and trying to help other people take what they've learned through the process of working with myself and my company and creating some sort of positive result through that. But I definitely think the vast majority of all of my energy in life definitely is invested into um, first and foremost myself. Honestly, I always try to put myself first, and some people kind of take that the wrong way. But what I mean when I say that is when I invest all my time and effort and energy and money into myself, it's because if you put yourself first, you're now giving yourself the ability to help other people. I think most people do the opposite. They put all their time and energy and effort into other things like politics and their friends and their family and whatever, and they put themselves last, which means that you are not empowering yourself to be able to do anything in an effective way when it comes time to build a business or create some sort of tangible product or idea or service. So to answer your question, you know, I put a lot of effort into myself first, then my relationships and the people around me second, and then third would definitely be my business and things like that. And it, you know, it makes it sound like that's coming last, but I mean, they're all very important, and that's what all my energy goes into.
Yeah, I do believe that you have to worry about yourself first before you can worry about others. Now, so you said between 18 and 24, you made money through MySpace and t-shirt designs, but you said at 24 was the pivotal moment. What was it exactly? Did you create an actual brand, an actual business that made you, you know, into a legitimate entrepreneur? What was it exactly?
Yeah, it's another good question. We could probably talk for a couple hours about this, but the here are the bullet points. When I was 24, I had hit my own personal version of rock bottom, right? Because we could always look at other people's lives and say, you know, you had it much worse and all of that. You know, there are people in other countries that would kill to be in a life that maybe you or I have, even at our worst moments. That is their, you know, their dream and their desire is to wish that life was that good. So I never sit around and say, oh, pity me, your life was bad. But for me, it was just a turning point. I really felt like my back was up against the wall. I was really frustrated with myself and where my life was at. I was frustrated with the people I was friends with. I was frustrated financially because I was just sick and tired of not having any money. You know, by the time I was 25, I don't think I can remember a single time that I ever really had more than $100, you know, in the bank. At the same time, I could say that I never really needed more than $100. You know, the times that I needed money were when I was in trouble and trying to pay off fines. But other than that, my priorities were just being able to buy a 12 pack of beer and go out that night and go party with people. So you don't need much more than $100 to be able to do that. You know what I mean? That was the lifestyle that I was living. I lived in the city that I still live in now, but obviously in a totally different universe within my own life. I was always broke. I was paying $100 in rent when I could, and I was living in this house that was falling apart. And I was in a relationship with this girl that I won't name, but I had been in a relationship with her for about 2 years. And the breaking point for me was that up until this point, I thought that I was cool. Like I thought I was a cool dude. You know, I was always chasing girls and just being an idiot and partying and drinking. And I thought that that was cool. And I thought that was what I was supposed to be doing in my early 20s. And what happened to me was I was dating this girl, and 2 years into our relationship, I ended up finding out that she was living this whole other life outside of our relationship.
Hmm.
And not only was she in another relationship, but she was engaged to this person and pregnant with their kid.
Wow.
And here's why I share this when you ask me that question. Because up until that point, I thought that I was the greatest thing in the world. I just thought I was hot shit. I thought I was so cool. And that was the first time in my life where I realized that I wasn't as cool as I thought I was. If the girl that I had been dating and been in a relationship with for 2 years literally just decided, you know what, this is not good, and just started a whole new relationship with somebody else. So I thought that I was the boyfriend. I thought I was the main guy in the relationship. Turns out
Mhm.
I wasn't. Turns out I was like the secondary option. And I don't know, that really hit me a particular way. And it sounds funny, but at that same time, I was starting to realize that the couple friends that I spent most of my time with did not have my best interests at heart. These were like not good people. They're not people I could trust, not people that like really had my back or really cared for me at all. And again, not saying that I was the brightest star in the sky either. I had a lot of the same issues. I was not a truthful, like trustworthy person, to be honest. So they didn't really have a good reason to be friends with me either. But I was realizing from my side, the girl that I was with let me down. My friends that I was friends with, that I was spending time with, let me down. The house that I was living in ended up being condemned and shut down because it needed to be renovated. So now I had to move out of this house within 30 days. I had no money in the bank. My parents were not very proud of me, and I didn't communicate with them all that often. They felt that I had a lot of potential, but that I had just wasted it and went on to move to the city and just party and chase girls and be a dumbass. And that, I mean, that was the truth. That was what I did. So after years of doing that, like you mentioned, between 18 to 24, you're talking about 6 years of pretty much doing this. Um, I think I finally just hit a point to where I was so frustrated with myself and really seeing that my life was not that great. Being able to see that clearly for the first time was like really an important part in my journey, because I realized I really don't have anything else to lose. I could just totally change everything in my life. And it wasn't like I had any friends to lose. I no longer had a girl to lose. I wasn't going to lose my house. You know, I already lost everything. I didn't have any money or have anywhere to live anyway. Um, I had already experienced, you know, living in my car before and just kind of hopping couch to couch. So I just didn't really have anything to lose. So I figured, whatever, like I'll just kind of go for it and see what happens. I don't know. So when I say go for it, here is what happened. I met a guy who lived in Michigan. I was approached about network marketing when I was 24. I'd never heard of network marketing, wasn't familiar with the concept. As soon as I was introduced to it, I didn't really love the idea. I thought it was kind of weird and just kind of had the general thoughts that everybody else has, which is that it's a scam or whatever. Whether it is or not, I don't know. But, you know, I gave it a shot for a few months and I wasn't very good at it. But what I found is that there were people out there that were my age that weren't focused on the things that I was focused on at that time, which was partying and just being an idiot. And I really did meet some kids that were, you know, in their 20s, just making crazy amounts of money selling all kinds of different products, energy drinks and water filters and protein shakes and whatever. Um, that was really interesting to me, because to see that somebody could become successful using their network of people and using tools like Instagram and Facebook, that was fascinating to me, because it kind of reminded me of when I was younger and in high school. I was like, man, I'm actually pretty good at stuff like that. Like I like Instagram, and Facebook was new. You know, when I was in high school, like when I was a senior in high school was when Facebook was first blowing up. And I remember like how interesting that was to me. I'm like, damn, I can like connect with people on the internet through this tool. So to come full circle, network marketing is what introduced me to the idea of making a commission by selling a product, but and using digital tools to do that. And I mean, that's all a website does. That's all a Facebook ad does. It's the exact same thing. I mean, you're selling a product and you're making the margin when you sell that through the internet. You know, you identify who you want to sell to, you put a process in place, you implement that process, and you either make sales or you don't. So even though network marketing didn't stick with me, I very quickly moved to affiliate marketing. And that's when I really started to experience some success. So within like 3 to 6 months after just understanding this concept of like, man, I could find random products that I don't have to create and generate commissions from selling them somehow, some way, could actually make me an income. And so I kind of stumbled across affiliate marketing, and the rest is history. I really doubled down on trying to learn how can I use tools like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and building a blog and building a website, all these things that I was always interested in all along. And I'm like, man, I could be sitting at home behind a computer doing this and making a living. So that was kind of like what got me into the digital marketing world. And that was 2014. 2014 is when all that started.
So you found success in affiliate marketing. And it's kind of crazy because, there's another world out there. There's so many things that we don't know. We're living in our own little bubble. We have tunnel vision, and there's crazy opportunities. And I think people say entrepreneurs are born, but in reality, it just takes that one pivotal moment to kind of change your mindset. And, you don't have to be born an entrepreneur. You just have that one pivotal moment, and it can just change the course of your entire life. And that'll make you a serious businessman, because to be an entrepreneur, you can't half-ass it. You have to be, you need to be there all the way, right? And that's what you did in this case. And the only way was to go up, because you lost everything. You lost your girl, your home, had no money in the bank. And at that point in time, there's only one way, and it has to be up.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I was having a conversation with my brothers this past weekend about a friend of ours. And I was explaining the same thing. Some people don't have it's just not necessary for them to figure it out. They don't have to, because they can lean back on whatever it is, whether it's their parents or whether, they have their parents' credit card or something, and it doesn't mean they don't want to be successful. But when you don't have to do it, it's easier to not do it. You know what I mean? Like the quote of like, do the hard things and your life will be easy, or do the easy things and your life will be hard. Like it just rings so true, because that is accurate. But people don't want to do hard things, and I don't blame them. I don't want to do hard things either. But in that moment back then, when I was 24, like I just didn't really have any other choice. There wasn't anything else for me to lean back on. So there really just wasn't anything to lose. Like people already kind of thought, like, I know I mentioned that I thought I was cool, but as I started to progress and get a little bit older, I realized like I was not cool, man. And nobody else really thought I was either. So I didn't have anything to lose. It didn't matter if I was embarrassed by trying to say, hey, I'm going to try to learn this whole business thing or this internet marketing thing or this branding thing or whatever. And now I can look back and it's funny because it was totally worth it. But back then I didn't have this fear of like being embarrassed, because like, why would I care what people thought if the people around me weren't even around anymore? It was really just up to me to either figure it out or just keep going down the path I was going. I could have easily just drifted along and found some other shitty friend group that was partying, drinking, being idiots, and just kept going down that spiral. And who knows where I'd be? I really couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I mean, it definitely wouldn't be good. I know that for sure. But I think in a weird way, just the right bad moments in my life aligned all at the same time. And I was like, whatever, what is there to lose?
Yeah, I think if you have that mindset of not caring, because a lot of people, they do have something to fall back to, their parents and whatnot. And, they have friends around them. And if they try a business and they fail, they can feel some sort of way. But if you have none of that, you feel no embarrassment, and you just go for it, because right now you're in survivor mode. And once you're in your survivor mode, you have to make it work, and there's no time to be sad, right? So after affiliate marketing, after you found success, what happened next?
Yeah, so I really stuck to that for quite a while. I built a little website called The Social Campus, and that was like my bread and butter until about 2016. But to fill in the gap, that website was like the asset that I was building. I took that website and learned how to use WordPress. I learned how to use MailChimp. I was fortunate enough to meet Brooke, who is still my girlfriend today. We've been together for over 6 years now. And I ended up moving in with her, and I would walk to VCU, which is the college campus here. And I would just use the free Wi-Fi on the college campus. I would walk over there every day. I had this little crappy laptop that my grandma, who was like 80 years old, gave me. The thing hardly worked. And that was the laptop that I used to like learn everything. And I would just go over there every day and watch YouTube. You know, how do I run Facebook ads? How do I run a YouTube marketing campaign and get my YouTube titles and my videos to rank on Google? What is SEO? How does SEO work? How do I increase domain authority? Like I just started learning as much as I possibly could about the internet and how to take my little website that I created and how do I get a ton of traffic to it and how does that traffic make me money, right? And so you could do that through, you know, affiliate links and affiliate programs and banner ads and articles and guest blogging and all this stuff. And so I learned a ton about that. And then in 2016, all these like random people that I connected with on the internet started to kind of look at me as a marketing person, because now, like when I had conversations with random strangers, it wasn't about, hey, let's go to the bar. It wasn't about, hey, let's do this. It was about, hey, this is my blog and this is what I've been doing and this is what's been working for me. What about Instagram? What about Periscope? If you remember that coming out like a while back, that was around 2015. And that's what my conversation started to become, because I was no longer talking to these people that used to be in my life. And so once that became the line of communication, other opportunities started to just kind of flow in my direction. So every now and then somebody would be asking me a question during conversation and say, well, hey, you know, maybe I could pay you to set up a blog like this for me. Or, hey, what do you think about my Instagram account? Like, how can I maybe set it up a little bit better? Or what do you think about redoing my blog? Or how often should I write articles? Or, you know, can you help me come up with a content strategy or a marketing plan? And I just started to get practice working with individuals, whether it was, you know, a brand new real estate agent, somebody that's, you know, running a little local lawn care company. And that just started to happen, not a lot, but just every now and then, you know, like for the year, like 2015, I probably worked on like 5 different projects where like I actually worked with a person who paid me to help them. And I just got hooked. Like that was it. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Taking these marketing concepts that are complicated to other people that I tend to pick up pretty naturally and help people implement this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started as a freelancer, like in late 2015. As I rolled into 2016, I was getting so much business by myself as a freelancer that I was like, I need help. So my brother moved here from Jacksonville. I had another friend, Myke, who literally moved across the country, coast to coast from California. He had been working for some other marketing agency and it just wasn't going the way he wanted and came over here to work for me. I had another guy named Matt. He was one of my sales guys. And almost right away, we had a 5-person organization and started taking on local clients here in the state of Virginia and in the city that I live in, which is Richmond. And started landing like pretty impressive clients and pretty impressive like accounts. And in no time, man, we were crushing it. And so that's where things kind of took off. And that was where I started like a real agency and a real organization where, you know, now today we work with huge companies. You know, I've worked with Dairy Queen and Church's Chicken. I've worked with Trendy Butler and Fiverr, which is like the biggest freelance marketplace on earth. And it's been a roller coaster, man, but it's been a really great journey. So that is how affiliate marketing kind of shifted into starting a real company where we service, you know, clients and companies and brands and things like that.
So how did people find you and recognize you as a good digital marketer? Did you have a personal brand at that time?
Well, it's a good question. I think everybody has a personal brand, whether they know it or not, right? I mean, if you go by your own name, like if anybody is a person, so what I'm saying is like you can exclude people who just create anonymous accounts on the internet that are just trolling people. Like I wouldn't really consider that a brand. I mean, but if your name is Jack Stevenson and you're just a person, I mean, like you create some sort of impression when people look at you, right? And I mean, you could consider that a brand if you want to. It doesn't mean that that brand is supposed to have a result, but I mean, you have a theme to your life. Period. You know, people, even if you're not a business, you're not a brand, even if you've never posted a thing on social media a day in your life, you carry a theme with your life. You know, everybody can think of that person in their family that's like the most hilarious, unique person to them in the world, you know, Uncle so and so. Like, they have a brand. I mean, people think of them as something. They think of the most outstanding character traits that that person carries along with them. So you could call that a brand. Did I have a brand? Sure. I mean, I think so. I don't know what the answer to that question is. I mean, I feel that I did, kind of. I mean, I definitely was trying to. So I think you could say yes. Now, the way that I attracted clients was through all these new connections that I made, because remember, I kind of had a chance to like wipe the slate clean, you know? So by the time 2016 rolled around, it had been 2 years. I had no longer associated with any of the people that I had used to, used to hang out with between the ages of 18 and 24. Didn't talk to any of them. So now I had created this whole new impression for myself. So when somebody said, "Hey, who are you?" You know, my name was Myke, and what I did full time was marketing. And that was who I was from there on out. You know, that was what I spent all my time doing. And I mean, I'm not joking. Like, I eliminated all my friends. This is all I did every single day, all day long. Was I would wake up and try to figure out, how do I create a career by myself by sitting in a living room or on a college campus all day with a laptop? What does my work now become every day? What is my structure? You know, I never went to business school. I barely graduated high school. I didn't know how to create like a daily structure to learn things and then implement those and find a way to turn that into a life or a career. So once I started kind of just putting that message out there, and I mean, there's so many ways, like to give you like a technical answer. I did things such as what we're doing right now, trying to get on podcasts. Maybe not podcasts as popular as yours that have as many episodes as yours do, but surely there's somebody somewhere that just started their podcast and they've got 4 episodes and they're looking for that next person. I was willing to be that next person and get on there and talk about my blog, The Social Campus, or talk about, you know, how to start growing your email list or get your first 100 subscribers. You know, I wasn't this world-renowned marketing expert 6 years ago or 5 years ago. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I just talked about the simple stuff. And there are people out there that want to hear that and want to talk about it. And I just did it a little bit at a time. So a podcast is a good example. I did guest blogging, writing on little blogs here and there when I could. You know, even in my email signature, when you're going back and forth, I mean, that's a new impression that you get to make every single time, whether you put a little call to action in your email signature that says, "Hey, you know, get a free 30-minute branding consultation with me." That means every single time you're emailing somebody, that opportunity is there. And all you need is 1 or 2 people to take you up on that within a month. And that could be a new transaction for you. That could be a new commission. That could be making money for you just by being cautious and being clever enough to just add an email signature. You know, you want the law of large numbers on your side. You want to make sure that there's always digital assets and opportunities that are working on your behalf. So whether it's a podcast, an email signature, a website that is out there, an article that you're writing on your own site, an article that you're writing on somebody else's site, a post that you're making on social media, going live on TikTok or Instagram, these are all sales activities in a way.
Mm-hmm.
They all create some sort of transaction, even if it's not monetary. It could start a conversation. So those are some of the ways that I started to get people to reach out to me, because by the topics that I talked about, it was clear that I knew something that other people didn't, or that other people hadn't tried to learn about yet. And smart people would rather just hire the person who knows how to do it right than try to learn it all themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I was the opposite for a long time because I didn't have any money. I didn't want to hire anybody. I just wanted to learn it all. So I spent a good 2 or 3 years of my life, every single day of every single month, just learning marketing and just sitting behind a computer. And slowly but surely, you know, I was able to get a better computer, get a better phone, get a better camera, start making better content. And, you know, it just started to take off from there. But that was how I got, you know, my first handful of clients was from conversations, referrals, just putting it out there, just putting my neck out there and seeing what happened.
Definitely, man. So you said once you learn all that, I mean, you're essentially self-taught on the internet. And so you said you had so much work as a freelancer. You had your group of 5. You had so much work. You're working with the big brands. Now, for someone who didn't have the college education and was self-taught with everything, how did you manage 5 people, and how did you kind of scale that into a legitimate agency?
Yeah, you could call it a fumble for sure. You know, like I fumbled my way through it, man. It wasn't great. It wasn't easy. It wasn't organized. Even today, I'm almost like, I'm always hungry to try to become a better leader to myself and the people around me. You know, leading, like, I think people forget about that. Like, people talk about being like this leader, and I'm not even like calling myself a leader, but I think leading yourself is critically important. Like, sure, you can, anybody can tell other people what to do. We see that every day on the internet. Everybody's telling everyone else what to do. But leading yourself is actually really hard. You know, waking up in the morning and saying, okay, these are my two objectives for the day, and this is the structure of my day, and this is what time I want to get these things done. And, you know, this is what I want to see happen over the next day, over the next month, over the next quarter of the year. Those things are really hard. And I feel like I'm consistently pretty obsessed over trying to become efficient when thinking about those things and trying to actually accomplish and measure my results. So, to come back to your question, when I first started, none of those things even crossed my mind. Like, I had no clue what I was doing. We didn't have project management. We didn't have, you know, a task board. We didn't have weekly meetings. And even today, we're still always getting better at those things, but I just didn't know that stuff exists. And once you find out that it does exist, then you got to have money to pay for those softwares. You know, I used to just keep a set of folders on my desk and just have a piece of paper with a project on it and move the piece of paper from one folder to the next. And that was like how I tracked what we were doing. And surprisingly, it actually worked fairly well. But the more that I learned about project management and managing people and running a business and understanding a balance sheet, understanding, you know, what is a profit and loss statement? How do you actually determine what you charge for a service? How do you measure the margin and figure out, okay, how much does it cost to actually fulfill this service and what do we make on the back end? I didn't know anything about any of that. So to answer your question, I mean, I really fumbled through it. One of the greatest resources that I could ever recommend to anybody is to watch the television show The Profit. And the host of The Profit is a guy, his name is Marcus Lemonis. His net worth is like in the billions. The guy runs probably almost 100 different companies. He's the CEO of Camping World and Good Sam and a bunch of other companies. It's actually amazing how much information this guy puts out there. But he was like a really great resource for me starting in 2015. I actually ended up meeting him later that year at a seminar, but literally I'll just watch that show and he teaches you this stuff. You know, he teaches you how to walk into a business and understand, if you're in a physical space, how much revenue per square foot does this space generate compared to how much it could? So really getting almost a college level education through other free resources that are out there. You know, you don't have to have a master's degree to understand business. Could you do it that way? Absolutely. Is one better than the other? I don't know. I've only got one of them. I've just got the self-taught YouTube degree. You know, that's what I've got. But that's a great resource for people that are trying to learn about business. That's what I did. And I spent a lot of time, you know, reading books and watching YouTube videos and watching, you know, television shows that were relevant. You know, there are other ones out there. You know, there's, you know, Shark Tank and Billion Dollar Buyer and stuff like that. But I really like The Profit. I feel like I learned a lot about business from that TV show.
I actually haven't heard of it, but I do want to check it out. And there's actually some movies out there that really, you know, inspire me, like entrepreneurship movies. You know, for example, the founder, the guy of like McDonald's.
Yeah.
You know, you can watch the Wall Street movies. You know, all these cool entrepreneurship movies that really, even like The Pursuit of Happiness. You know, you can watch all these movies, and it can just take that one book, that one podcast, that one resource that just changes or shifts your mindset into who you want to be, right?
Definitely.
And I feel as any entrepreneur, everything is a fumble. You're not going to get things right the first time around. You know, you're going to struggle in the beginning, and it's all about persistence and, you know, being resilient. As long as you go through those fumbles, those hurdles, eventually something's going to click. And if it doesn't, you just have to stick with it until it does, or you have to pivot at some point, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely agree. You know, some other good movies that are kind of based on entrepreneurship. I like The Big Short. That's a good one.
Hell yeah.
Even the TV show Entourage. Like, Entourage is a good, today people would probably find it like wildly offensive, but I think it was like the funniest show ever. It was really good. It was like a good combination between like current events, pop culture, kind of like a funny TV show, but it did have kind of these elements of business in it and what it's like to try to get clients and grow an agency. These guys mostly did like a talent agency for actors and stuff based in Hollywood, but it's a good show and you learn a lot from it. And you have fun watching it because it's a funny TV
Mm-hmm.
show. So, but yeah, there's definitely some good um, conceptual resources out there when it comes to like TV shows and movies.
Mm-hmm. And at what point did you write the credibility method, your
Yeah,
book?
I wrote that in 2018. Um, I I enjoy writing. I don't love it, but I definitely like it enough to do it as often as I can when I remember to and when I have the time to. So I wrote that book because the more success that I found, the harder I found, the harder it became for me to answer people's questions. So what I mean by that is as I started to find success, I started to get invited to, all these events and to speak on stage. I shared the stage with Grant Cardone and Ryan Stewman and Billie Jean and Sean Whalen and Dan Fleshman and Jason Capital and like all these people. And the more I traveled and did this, the more people would ask me questions like, oh, how'd you find the motivation? And like kind of like simple questions. But I remembered in the beginning, like the answers to those questions were so clear. And the more money I started to make and the more success I found and just the better life became, I honestly kind of lost touch with like how hard things were when I was getting started. And there's only one way to really understand what somebody is going through, and that's to go through it yourself. And I did, like I literally started without any help, had to figure all this shit out on my own, and then make it somehow, make it. And when I got to the point where in 2016, so this is a couple years before I wrote the book, I was working with my buddy Adam, and we had built a webinar. We were still doing like a lot of affiliate stuff. This is like in the middle of my transition from like heavy affiliate marketing and big commissions to going more service based and more like recurring client retainers and stuff. We built this webinar that did, I think it was like $189,000 in sales in a month.
Hmm.
And like we were crushing it. And like for the first time in my life, I experienced just being able to do whatever I wanted. Like if I wanted to buy a plane ticket, it didn't even matter. I didn't have to look at a bank account or anything. And when that happens, I feel like you really lose touch with like the hustle that it took to get you to that point. You know what I mean? Because things just become easier. When you have money and you have connections, things just aren't hard anymore. They aren't as hard, right? Like reaching a really high level of success. And obviously I would like for my success to continue to grow, but reaching a high level of success makes things easier, and it's definitely hard along the way. So I wrote that book as a result of me honestly being concerned with me like forgetting how I really made it to where I had gotten at that point. And that was, almost 3 years ago now. And the fact that success is simple, and I wanted to write a book where I really laid that out. Like things are this straightforward, things are this simple. And so it was almost like I didn't know if anybody would buy it or not. And of course people did and still do today, but I didn't know if anybody was going to buy it, but I still took joy in writing it because I felt like I was documenting what had actually worked for me. And that was why I wrote the book. And that was also why I called it credibility method, because I went from this guy who was working dead end jobs. And at that point, like right towards the end of kind of like these really crappy years, I was working as a bartender. I was working in strip clubs. I was wasting all my money. I was drinking nonstop, like partying, chasing girls. We talked about that, right? And then all of a sudden you fast forward today, and I can't even I can't even put into words how different I am as a person compared to who I used to be. I mean, it's just wild. I don't even physically look the same. It's almost like I truly feel that I've become a different person. I had a crazy problem with lying. And it took a lot to like overcome that, acknowledge that I was a liar and kind of a piece of shit, and just say, okay, well, how do I fix this? How do I change this? It took a lot of reading books and watching videos and just erasing everything I had been taught. And I really felt like my almost everything I had been taught up until I was 24 years old, it kind of dawned on me that like, this is literally all like BS. This is all a lie. Like a lot of the things that I felt I believed were just not accurate. They just weren't true. So kind of repositioning the way that I thought about things really made a huge difference for me. And so I document some of that stuff in the book and just go through what helped me. And now it's like, here's the perfect example. Back when I was 24, I could call somebody, when I really needed their help, and they probably wouldn't pick up the phone, or I could call somebody and say, hey, I've got this idea and I think it's going to work and I'd like for you to be involved. That people would blow me off or ignore me, literally ignore me or forward my calls to voicemail and just, avoid my text messages. That does not happen to me today. You know what I mean? Like people respect me in my industry. When I call somebody, they answer the phone, they know who I am. And if I brought up something to somebody or an idea or a concept, they would know that I mean business and they would respect my opinion. And I mean, that in itself is the essence of being a person that carries credibility, a person that carries weight with the things that they do and their decisions. And I felt like I had made that transition. I felt like I had made that change from this idiot that nobody respected to somebody that actually could gain the respect of somebody and get somebody to do business with them. And that was why I wrote the book. And I wrote it in 2018. And I still recommend that people check it out today.
Now, something that really resonated with me, what you just said, is that, as you get more success, you get money, you get more resources, more connections, and it's easier to make money, right? But not everyone went through those circumstances that you went through. You have a different perspective, right? And so if someone were to ask you who was in a position, in your same position as you were before, or maybe in a worse position, you kind of know what to do, how to guide them, right? But if you ask someone who, was already successful and became more successful, they're not going to have that perspective, but you have a different insight where a lot of people can look at and take inspiration from. Because if you have a friend or if you know someone who's successful that came from the same neighborhood, same circumstances, and that gives you added motivation, because if this person can do it, why can't you? If this person went to the same exact thing that you did and became successful, why can't you? So at that point, you're setting an example that there is no excuses and there's always a way to find a way out and to make it,
Yeah, absolutely.
So after, finding the success, you want to give back to the community, and, you really, in your content, you talk about it's important to be an authority figure, especially on social media. They want attention all across the different social media platforms, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it. Now, to talk about tactics, how do you really grow one's personal brand, and why is it so important nowadays?
Yeah, it's definitely a really good question. Like growing a personal brand, I'm not somebody sitting here with millions and millions of followers, so I can only talk about what I know for sure. And what I know for sure is that you don't need millions of followers to make an impact or make a lot of money or create a community of people that engage with you and, answer when you call and some of these things that we've been talking about. I think I've got 15,000 people that follow me on Instagram. I've got another 50,000 or so on TikTok, and maybe like 10,000 on Facebook. And a lot of that was done through small wins along the way, until I got to the point a couple of years ago where I was really comfortable with like sticking my neck out there and talking about what I had felt that I had learned. To be honest, I was almost like scared for a long time about putting content out there because I didn't want to seem like everybody else. I almost hated the idea of these, marketing gurus. Like a lot of people know like Tai Lopez and Grant Cardone. Like I didn't want to look like I was trying to be them. And it took me a while to get over the idea of putting content out and like putting my face out there and saying what I thought, for the world to listen to and to critique. And I put that off for a long time. So to answer your question, like how does somebody start to grow their brand? It's to not make the mistake that I did early on and just get over that, because I think people will find when they put their neck out there and they, make content that talks about a topic that they are fairly versed in and that they do understand, because there's a difference when you don't know what you're talking about. But when you at least know a little bit and you do feel like you can get out there and you can help somebody, or you learn something fun and is interesting that you can share, or when you jot down a funny idea that you could make content about later and you think people would laugh at it, the thing that's going to help you grow is taking action and creating something to put out there when you do have that idea. And I think people have all these ideas and they just never take action on them. They think, oh, that'd be so funny if I, created this video and posted that, regardless of what it is. And people worry like, oh, well, someone else has already done that. Or maybe I'll look like I'm trying to be this person, or I'm trying too hard. They're afraid of looking like they're trying too hard. And I felt that way too. It's not me casting judgment saying, hey, you shouldn't do that, because I made those mistakes as well. I think most people do. But looking back, I wish that I would have gotten rid of that thought, that like limiting belief earlier on. I think I was just concerned with me looking like every other marketing person out there that was talking about, oh, run Facebook ads, or oh, do this, or oh, do that. And I waited, I hesitated and waited too long. And there are people who have been doing what I do for a shorter period of time than as long as I have done it. And dude, they have such a bigger audience than I do, because they weren't afraid to just get started. I really almost didn't even start really posting content until I got verified, because I felt like I needed that, like, what do you call it? Like that like I needed to be accepted or something,
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really wish that I didn't do that. So that's one piece of advice, right? Is just start sooner than you think you should. And even when I tell people that, they still won't do it, because I knew that I was doing it back then. I knew I was making that mistake. So very few people will take that advice, if any.
Yeah.
So for those who don't take that advice, instead what I would say, and this would be more tangible advice, is go create a real content plan. Go figure out who you are. What is your life or brand theme? What do you stand for? What do you believe in? Talk to your best friends and figure out, like, ask these people like, yo, dude, when you think of me, what do you think of? Do you think of somebody cool? Do you think of tattoos? Do you think of skateboarding? Do you think of somebody who's brutally honest? Do you think of somebody who's sarcastic? Do you think of, like, what do you think of? And when you ask a friend that and they give you that advice, you can now say, okay, well, maybe these are some of the things that make up my brand and who I am. And once you have that and you can write them down, you can say, all right, well, even if I don't know where to get started, now I've at least got like a benchmark where I can kind of build off of these things. Am I somebody who's funny? Am I somebody who's not funny? Am I somebody who's, that creates mostly visual content? Or do I not like being on camera? Should I try to create mostly audio content? People just don't think about this stuff. And when you sit down and you force yourself to take 2 hours and you get a piece of paper and you say, this is me, this is what I stand for, these are my content pillars. And for people who don't know what that means, I mean, think about it. They're the pillars that hold up your house. Just figure out, what do I create? What is it that I make? And do I want to make something? And if you do, and you're somebody who wants to have some sort of brand or some sort of business, then you got to decide on these content pillars and figure out a routine after that. So figure out your traits, figure out your pillars, and then come up with some sort of routine that you're doing every week or every month. I'm not the guy who posts on social media every single day. I post a few times a month, and I get away with that, and it works out great. Especially on TikTok, I'll post a couple times, and some of these videos have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views, because I took the time to plan it out versus just posting crap every single day. So that's what I would say. Try to create a plan, and you don't need to follow a certain, framework or guide to begin with. Just write down your ideas and start there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Now, this is up for debate and it's very subjective, but some people say, personal branding is very important. Others will say it's not, because if you do a personal brand and you're very aggressive on it, that's going to hinder your you know, your results in your other businesses, because running a personal brand is a lot of work. You do got to post content. And that means that if you allocate your time on your personal brand, you're losing time on your business. And if you're losing time in your business, then you're not going to yield as the good results as you had before, right? And one can say, you know, when you were going to the college campus with the free Wi-Fi, you know, you could have documented your whole process, start your personal brand from there, and show your whole story. But if you did that, you wouldn't have learned as much about affiliate marketing and whatnot. So the question is, do you think it's important to start a personal brand once you find success, or should you start right away?
Yeah, I think you should start right away. And think about it like this. Business is personal, right? Like I don't want to say I dislike the people that believe this, but I really dislike the idea that like business is not personal, or like, oh, this is my work-life balance, right? I think that's so ridiculous because, especially in today's time, think about it like this. The smartest businesses, and I'm talking like the biggest of the biggest companies in the world, and even the smaller boutique brands, they are finding a face or a character to tell their story. And Subway would be a good example. You know, they started years ago using Jared, and they give him a face and they tell his story because people buy into a story. If you are just some conglomerate and a company with a logo, nobody gives a shit about what you have to say. Think about some of the dinosaur companies that are starting to fade away today. Think about I know a lot of people like love soda, but like think about these companies like Palmolive and Coca-Cola and Windex. Like, dude, these companies don't have like a face to their brand. So what's happening is other brands of today are coming in and taking that place. New companies with, think about what we said earlier about branding, about figuring out your traits and your core values and the theme of your life. Well, you could say the same about a brand and a business. Figure out the theme of your brand and what is your story? How are you telling your story through that brand? And State Farm is a really good example. They've really doubled down on this like Jake from State Farm thing. They're using him as the face of their brand because people believe in these stories, and they're using him throughout these different series of advertisements that we see on our TV. Oh, it's Jake from State Farm and he's dressed up as Jake from State Farm for Halloween, or, oh, he's answering the door and people are giving him pizza because he did such a great job giving them rates. It's this humorous thing that we're constantly seeing, and us as the viewer, we're following that story. So when we think of State Farm, we don't think of the State Farm logo. We now think of a person that we can connect with, that we're similar in age to. So absolutely, people should be focused on creating a brand. Now, if someone absolutely terribly hates the idea of creating a brand or putting their face out there, it doesn't have to be you. I mean, you can find a way to tell a story through a figure using your brand in other ways. There are absolutely ways to do that. If you think of what is the Squatty Potty? I couldn't think of it. Like literally, their advertisements are some of the funniest in the world. And the agency that created their commercials is one of the greatest creative agencies in the world. They're called the Harmon Brothers, and they created that ad. And it's not of a person, it's of a animated clay unicorn. You know what I mean? And that is the figure. Like when you think of a Squatty Potty, like people think of that commercial. You could also think of like Purple Mattress. They do a really, really great job of advertising as well. And they're personifying their product through telling stories. So a brand doesn't always have to be one thing. It just has to be a story. What story are you inviting people into, and what is the story that you're telling, and how does your brand tell that story? If you decide that business and life, or business is not personal, you're never going to be able to make that connection of how you can tell a story that people, real life people, can connect with if you don't like the idea of business and people being the same thing. People that just try to be strictly business and work-life balance, all this stuff, it's like, dude, that's not real. Or maybe it is real, but it's not lasting. The greatest brands in the world tell great stories, and they find a way to connect with real people. So I think the answer to your question is yes. Start a personal brand if you care about building a business or living a life where your every move creates dollars and cents, you know?
Yeah.
Um, think about, I know I'm rambling here, but think about Charlie D'Amelio, you know, like she is her brand. Like when people think of her, they think of the content she creates and people know who she is. And they feel like they're looking at their content and they're thinking about Charlie's life and they're thinking either A, like I want to live a life like that, meaning that Charlie's inviting them into her story and they feel they're living vicariously through her because life is so great and whatever. And she takes the personal time to, make videos and talk about her life and whatever. Maybe she's not doing that quite as much now because of the ridiculous amount of fame that she's receiving from being on TikTok as a platform. But that's another good example. It doesn't always have to be a business. You can create a life that pays you a fortune without creating like a company. You can be a brand that is a legal entity, right? That is a actual company, right? Like a legal entity. But it doesn't need to be a product that you're selling. I mean, there's so many things that you can do today that could make you tens of thousands of dollars every single month. And she's a good example of it. She's doing brand partnerships with companies that already have products that she doesn't have to make. They ship the products to their customers. She doesn't have to be involved in any of that. She just is a mouthpiece or a spokesperson for different brands. She makes money when she live stream on YouTube and TikTok. She makes money when she does a partnership with Reebok. So like, why would anybody under the age of 50 not want to be involved in that? Like, why would you not want to do that if you're somebody comfortable putting yourself out there? You're comfortable streaming on the internet, comfortable, doing anything like that. Yes, you should create a personal brand. The only reason you shouldn't is if you're just not an internet person. You're somebody who, doesn't, your profile picture on Facebook is of a dog or a cat, and you don't, you're not a social media person, then don't do that. But if you are, then you should definitely focus on having some sort of brand because there are assets and rewards and benefits that come along with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Myke, how much time do you have left? I was just wondering.
Yeah, I mean, we've been going for an hour. I mean, I'm cool, man. I'm down to keep chatting.
Yeah, I just want to just say this, that in terms of consumer psychology nowadays, I definitely do believe that people connect more with people instead of just a logo. I think maybe back in the day, it was just binary where you just have a sales guy and a business. Now you see both of them at the same time. And something that hit me that you said, even if you have a small social media following, I mean, it does not matter about the numbers. I was watching this, listening to this podcast, the Mike Tyson one, the Hot Box, and he said, yeah, like no matter how small you are, you can make a huge difference. And an example that Mike Tyson said is that if you go in a room and there's a mosquito, that's going to ruin your whole, not your whole day, but it's going to freaking make you panic, right? One little mosquito in the whole room, even though it's so small, it can make a huge difference, right? And in that sense, you don't need 1 million followers. You just need a strong community around your back to really create that personal brand. Because even Gary Vee says it, like, depending on how strong your community is, you can yield more results, more conversions with 10,000 followers compared to someone who has 1 million followers. It's all about the engagement at the end of the day. And you even see it with Elon Musk, he creates a tweet and, things go off the roof, For example, when he smoked weed, literally the prices went down. And that's because Elon Musk and Tesla, they're like this, they're intertwined. So whatever he does, no matter what action he does, the stock price of Tesla or SpaceX, I mean, SpaceX is private, but the prices of Tesla can go up or down, right? And it's so tied into that. And it's just crazy. Another thing is like with the flamethrowers, like he can promote that easily. And I think Tesla came up with a new drink.
Yeah.
What is it? Tequila? Yeah. I'm pretty sure with one tweet, he can sell that out in 1 minute because of his personal brand. And definitely, you can see that with the giants with Elon Musk's or the small boutiques that you just mentioned. It doesn't have to be you. It can be a mascot, for example. Just creating that storyline, because with the consumer psychology, they just want to connect with people, not just a logo at the end of the day.
Well, and I think another thing that people have this misconception about when it comes to like having all these followers is there's usually some sort of delivery mechanism between someone's social media profile and then it all of a sudden getting all these followers, right? So what I mean by that is it's very rare that somebody just consistently makes content on Instagram or something, and then just day by day, week by week, they grow a little bit, and then all of a sudden they have 1 million followers. Like that's just not how it works, right? Something always happens. And as an example, when I first got on TikTok, literally the first video I ever posted, sorry, not the first video I ever posted, but the first one that I posted that blew up, got like 500,000 or 600,000 views on it. And World Star Hip Hop picked up the video and put it on the front page of their website. And that website drove me a bunch of followers. Now, of course, the video helped too, but I mean, millions of people look at World Star Hip Hop. Like I've heard of World Star Hip Hop since I was like 11 years old. You know what I mean? You get in a fight in middle school and everyone's yelling World Star, you know? Like that's just how it is. So there's always like a delivery mechanism. Like even if you think of the Paul brothers, right? Like Logan and Jake, like eventually somewhere down the line, they did something that other people started sharing. Like there's always a messenger. There's always a distribution process that happens that puts your content out there. You know, sure, it could get picked up in the YouTube algorithm or Instagram algorithm. You could get on the explore page. But when you're really talking about people who have millions and millions of followers, there's something in the middle, right? There's always a piece in the middle. Think about somebody who is an amazing singer. Nobody follows them, but then they go on The Voice or American Idol. Mm-hmm. That is the system that now has delivered them virality. It's brought them followers. It has created their audience. And I think people get lost in this idea of like, man, I need to do all this work to get me followers. The reality is you should be searching for what is the messenger, right? What is that delivery system? And you could even look at TikTok as that system. When it first came, you know, it's a little harder now, but when it first popped up at the beginning of the year, it was like, man, the combination of TikTok and COVID happening was the perfect recipe to turn everyday normal people into like a viral superstar or sensation. And that's exactly what happened for a lot of people. So there's always a messenger. There's always a middleman that's bringing you that attention. And then if your content is good, people will follow you. If it's not, then people won't. You know, there's nothing that's going to beat bad content. Doesn't matter what happens. But yeah, I bring it up because I agree with you. You know, something happens and, you know, like you said, Elon now has the platform to where he could send out a tweet and sell, 10,000 bottles of tequila if he wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either you post great content, the stars align, or there's a catalyst, and that catalyst is maybe someone tagging you for whatever reason and you just blow up, right? You just get lucky like that. Or not lucky, you just post a lot of content, high quality content, and you get found at the end of the day.
Yeah. And it's not to say that your goal is to try to get picked up by some delivery system and it go viral. And that's what gives you all those followers at one time. But if you think about the average content creator that's just consistently going at it, they were doing it long before and they're going to be doing it long after, but somewhere along the way, they're going to catch a break. A good example is a friend and client of mine. His name is Patrick Bet David. I remember like years ago, I had never heard of him. And a lot of people hadn't heard of him. And then he made this one video called 90 seconds of, or I don't know, it was like life, 90 seconds of a day of life of an entrepreneur or something like that. I can't think of the title of it. And it was a really, really well done video. And I mean, it got like, I think 100 or 200 million views on Facebook and it went viral everywhere. Right. And that was people's first time ever hearing of Patrick Bet David. Now the guy has a YouTube channel that has like 2 or 3 million subscribers. His content's everywhere, but people didn't know that, dude, that guy's been a millionaire for a long time and has been consistently creating amazing content way before he made that video. But he did it, and consistently, like I mentioned at the beginning of our interview, the law of large numbers was on his side. Eventually his day came and the right video fell in front of the right group of people and boom, it took off. And he finally kind of hit that curve that just put him into like a new category. You know what I mean? It really solidified him as like a solid content creator. But if his content was crap, that would have never happened, no matter how long he kept doing it. But that's what I'm talking about as far as like there's always kind of like a middleman or a delivery system that keeps moving you up to that next level. And it's just you're hitching a ride. You know, all your job is just to create good content. It'll eventually hitch that ride to that next level. And then once you hit that next level, you'll find new ways of creating better, more innovative, more creative content. That's just how it goes. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even think my content is all that great, but compared to 2 years ago, it's way better.
Mm-hmm.
And now I know I have a system and a routine behind it to make good content, you know, better devices, better cameras, and it just gets better as you go. So you have to start somewhere eventually, and eventually you'll kind of hitch that ride to the next level, and you'll just keep going until you either stop or you figure out that, man, this is the life I'm supposed to be in. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, you know? But yeah, I don't know. That's my thoughts on creating content. You know?
Yeah. And just to close out here, I think if you're just consistent, you know, one day you're going to get picked up by the algorithm, maybe, or you'll get tagged. I think you have to be patient. Nowadays, a lot of entrepreneurs are super impatient. They expect things in 6 months, but in reality, it can take maybe a year or two, and maybe even then it won't work. So there's so many entrepreneurs in the space, a lot of personal brands, and it can be very easy for a new entrepreneur, an aspiring entrepreneur, to look at all these personal brands and, you know, to feel bad about yourself and just to compare yourself with others. But in reality, you know, he or she might be sad. And I think you have to focus on your own story, and just focus on you at the end of the day, because, you know, social media can be a double-edged sword. You can be a huge consumer or you can be a huge producer. And if you just produce as much content as possible, high quality, then you're going to be found. And, you know, I think that opportunities are endless, you know? So
yeah, definitely. And I think, a good key piece of advice is to stop trying to take shortcuts. You know, people like constantly, man, I get these DMs about like, oh, engagement groups and DM groups and engagement pods and, you know, just all this crap, man. You know, these people are auto following and auto unfollowing. And like, I can't believe people are even still doing that. Like, people should have learned their lesson with that 3 years ago, that just doesn't work. People are creating hundreds of fake accounts that are set up to like auto DM people and be like, oh, hey, you know, like, I don't know. It's just so crazy. Like, I see them in the Forex industry all the time. They've got these automated DMs that say, hey, go check out Forex Steve over here. Like, he's inviting you to be a part of whatever, or, you know, he loves your content. You should go check him out. And people really think that works. Like, I'm going to like somebody's going to open their DM and not recognize that this is just some fake bot profile sending an automated DM to thousands of people. You know, like, the same amount of time and energy that goes into setting up that is all the time and energy that you need to just create your first great piece of content. And you're going to make more progress by just doing it the way it should be done, rather than trying to take shortcuts and using software and just doing all the crap that doesn't work. You know, I know that's kind of vague, but those are some examples. Like, people are taking shortcuts.
Yeah, sometimes you gotta take the long cuts to understand every crook and cranny, all the nuances, so you can really learn it. You know, if you take the shortcuts, eventually it's gonna bite back. But Myke, you know, I don't want to take too much of your time here. So, you know, if people want to find you, hit you up, get more advice on personal branding, you know, where can they find you?
Yeah, great question. So luckily I'm easy to find. You can Google my name and all my stuff pops up. You know, on social media, my name is just Myke Metzger. But if someone wants to actually connect with me, the best place to do that is on my website, which is mykemetzger.com.
Cool. And to get your book, The Credibility Method, where can they find that?
Yep. Just hop on Amazon or any major book retailer like Barnes & Noble, or Google Play Store has the ebook version. But Amazon's the go-to. Just hop on there and either search my name or search the name of the book, Credibility Method, and you'll find it.
Cool. So I'll add that in the show notes. So if anyone's interested, they can click on that and click the link. All right, Myke?
Awesome, man.
So, bro,
thanks so much for having me. Good talking to you.
It was a pleasure, bro. Have a good one.
Cool.